Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
Chapter 19, Silk and Shadows. It had been weeks since the transformation was declared complete. Weeks of living inside skin that responded to her thoughts, yet remained fundamentally foreign. Weeks of catching her reflection in store windows, bathroom mirrors, polished elevator doors, still startled by the woman who stared back, even as she perfected the art of inhabiting her. Weeks of slipping into dresses that hugged every curve with intimate precision, fabrics clinging to contours that had been scientifically engineered to match Yore's exact proportions. Weeks of smiling just right, not too wide, not too eager, with that particular tilt of the head that Youre employed when being attentive. Laughing just enough, the melodic chuckle that suggested amusement without being overly familiar. Moving like the woman she had become not only in body, but in presence, the distinctive subtle sway of hips, the precise angle of wrist when reaching for a glass, the way of crossing legs at the ankle rather than the knee. The devil's in the details, Handler Wexler had reminded her during the final briefing. It's not enough to look like her. You have to be her down to the smallest gesture, the most unconscious habit. And now, Youre stood before a full-length mirror in a high-rise hotel room, adjusting a shimmering slip of black silk that barely passed for a dress. The fabric clung to her like a secret, revealing and concealing in equal measure, the hemline dangerously high, the neckline dangerously low. It was cut on the bias, flowing over her transformed curves like liquid shadow, catching the light with each subtle movement. "They call this a dress?" she murmured to her reflection, running her hands down her sides, feeling the expensive material slide beneath her palms. More like strategic fabric placement with aspirations. The fabric clung to her like a secret. Her hair was done in soft curls, the black waves framing her face with calculated casualness, the style deliberately chosen to soften her features while emphasizing her eyes. Her lips were painted a deep wine red, the color drawing the eye, making her mouth the focal point of her face. Her eyes smoldered with practiced allure, smoky shadow applied with precision, lashes darkened and lengthened, the crimson of her irises intensified by the contrast. She leaned closer to the mirror, examining the final result with clinical detachment layered over simmering anticipation. The woman who looked back was devastatingly beautiful, not just pretty or attractive, but stunning in a way that transcended conventional beauty and veered into the territory of biological weapon. "Well," she said softly to her reflection, "if looks could kill, I'd be the most efficient assassin in Y's history." Mission parameters: extract intel from Anton Lemire, arms trafficker. Weakness: women, strong drinks, soft touches. She had memorized his file thoroughly, middle-aged but fit, divorced twice, known for expensive tastes and poor impulse control. His network spanned 3 continents, specializing in experimental weapons with particularly nasty capabilities. And somewhere in that labyrinth of deals and double crosses lay information critical to finding the antidote that could revive the real Youre, if it existed at all. Method: seduction. The word hung in her mind, no longer abstract or theoretical. Weeks ago, it would have been just another tactic in her arsenal as Loid Forger, a tool employed with cold precision, divorced from personal satisfaction. Now, it carried new weight, new implications, new sensations that her transformed body anticipated in ways her former self could never have imagined. And Youre, formerly Loid Forger, was now perfectly suited for the task. Her body had been crafted not just to pass visual inspection, but to function completely as female, to respond, to feel, to desire in ways that made the seduction not just convincing but authentic. The scientists had been thorough in their work, transforming not just appearance but physiology, neurology, hormonal balance, creating a being who didn't just look like a woman, but experienced the world through a female biological framework. She had been trained for this. Not just in posture, tone, or method. The agency had taken it further. The mind can only fake so much, Dr. Havitz had explained during one of their final sessions. For this particular cover to be viable, your body needs to respond authentically. Arousal has biological markers that can't be consciously controlled: pupil dilation, skin flush, subtle changes in vocal patterns, pheromone release. If those markers aren't present during intimate encounters, it could raise suspicion. After her transformation, she had undergone intimacy training weeks of carefully calibrated exercises, simulations, and, eventually, full physical engagement with a specialist. A trainer whose job it was to awaken the final piece of her new reality: desire. Think of it as advanced field preparation, the specialist, Madame Vivienne, had said during their first session. Tall, elegant, with knowing eyes and a clinical approach beneath her sensual exterior. Your body is new to you. Its responses are unfamiliar. We're going to map them together so you understand exactly how to use them and how they can be used against you. At first, it had been clinical, controlled, educational in the most technical sense, learning the geography of her transformed body, understanding its sensitivity thresholds, identifying the unique patterns of arousal and response that characterized her particular physiology. Your body has memory, Vivienne had explained, demonstrating with light touches along yours transformed skin. It remembers how to respond even if your consciousness doesn't. We're just reawakening what's already there. But the moment her body had been touched truly, with intention, something inside her had ignited. A response so immediate and profound it had startled her, sensation cascading through neural pathways that had been rewired to process pleasure differently, more intensely, with greater complexity. The warmth, the tension, the ache. The flush that began at her chest and spread upward to her face and downward to her core. The way her breath caught, her pulse accelerated, her skin became hypersensitive to even the lightest touch. The building pressure, the mounting need, the inexorable progression toward release. It had been unlike anything she'd ever known. Not as Loid, not even close. Her male body had known pleasure before. Direct, straightforward, predictable in its patterns and intensity. But this was hunger. Multifaceted, complex, layered, waves rather than points, patterns rather than lines, orchestras rather than single instruments. Need. A deep, pulsing want that lived beneath her skin and bloomed at the slightest touch, the barest suggestion, sometimes even at nothing more than a thought or glance. Her transformed body responded to stimulus with an immediacy and intensity that had no parallel in her former experience, desire becoming a physical presence, an entity with weight and substance. The trainer had taught her not just how to give pleasure, but how to revel in it, how to surrender to the experience and use it as a tool and, unexpectedly, a source of power. The greatest weapon in seduction isn't how you make them feel, Vivienne had told her, demonstrating a technique that made Yor gasp despite her attempts at detachment. It's how much you clearly enjoy it yourself. Genuine pleasure is the most convincing act there is because it isn't an act at all. She had left the program changed. Not just capable, but curious. Curious about the depths of sensation her new body could experience, the heights it could reach, the intricate dance of desire and satisfaction that played out through her transformed nervous system. Curious about how different partners, different techniques, different contexts might alter those experiences. Curious about the power that came with being the object of desire while simultaneously being the architect of another's pleasure. And tonight, that curiosity simmered beneath her skin, a low-grade heat that made her hyper-aware of every sensation. The silk against her thighs, the cool air on her bare shoulders, the slight pressure of the stiletto heels reshaping her posture into one of instinctive allure. "Let's see what you're made of, Anton Lemur," she murmured to herself, applying a final touch of perfume to her wrists and behind her ears, jasmine with undertones of amber, chosen specifically to complement her natural scent. Though I think we both know the answer is about 60% libido and 40% poor decision-making. The knock on the hotel room door came exactly on time, 9:00 p.m., as arranged through intermediaries who believed they were setting up a business meeting between a weapons buyer and a prolific supplier. 3 sharp raps, confident but not aggressive. The sound sent a ripple of anticipation through her. Game time. Yor turned, heels clicking as she crossed the plush carpet, the sound deliberate and measured, announcing her approach, building anticipation. She paused before opening the door, letting her posture shift, hips tilted slightly to accentuate the curve of her waist, shoulders relaxed to lower her center of gravity, a soft smile curving her lips into an expression that suggested both invitation and discretion. She drew a deep breath, feeling her transformed chest rise and fall, the sensation still novel even weeks into her new existence. Then, with practiced ease, she opened the door. When she opened the door, Anton Lemur's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, the micro-expression of a man who thought himself prepared but found himself momentarily disarmed. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of tan that suggested yachts rather than honest work. His suit was bespoke, his watch unnecessarily complicated, his cologne expensive but applied with too heavy a hand. His gaze traveled down her body and back up with the practiced assessment of a man who believed he was being subtle. "Ms. Briar," he said, his voice carrying a slight Eastern European accent. "A pleasure to finally meet in person." Hook said. "Mr. Lemur," Yor said, voice low and velvety, modulated to hit that particular frequency that seemed to bypass the male conscious mind and connect directly to more primitive regions. "I hope you don't mind. I thought we might enjoy a drink before dinner." She gestured to the bottle of aged scotch she had arranged on the sideboard, his preferred brand, according to his file. He stepped inside, clearly forgetting the cover story he had rehearsed about weapons specifications and market territories. His attention was firmly fixed on her now, the business pretext already fading into background noise. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world." His attempt at casual charm was undermined by the slight hoarseness in his voice, the tell of a man already thinking ahead to possibilities beyond business. She closed the door with deliberate slowness, knowing the movement would draw his eyes to the curve of her hip, the length of her leg revealed by the high slit in her dress. "I find business discussions flow so much more smoothly when we've had time to get comfortable with each other first." The double entendre was delivered with just enough ambiguity to maintain plausible deniability while planting very specific suggestions. She let him in with a sway of her hips, the movement neither exaggerated nor subtle, just enough to draw the eye, to create a rhythm that induced following. The distance from door to sitting area became a runway, a performance space, a demonstration of the weapon she had become. "A beautiful view," he commented, gesturing to the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city sprawled below, twinkling with evening lights. "Indeed," she replied, glancing back over her shoulder to catch him staring not at the skyline, but at the curve where her waist met her hip. "The hotel certainly knows how to make an impression." She poured the scotch with practiced grace, the amber liquid catching the light as it flowed into crystal tumblers. "2 fingers, neat, isn't that how you prefer it, Mr. Lemur?" His eyebrow raised slightly at her knowledge of his preference. "You've done your homework." "I find it pays to know what pleases the people I work with," she responded, offering him the glass with a slight tilt of her head, her eyes meeting his with calculated directness. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a touch that lingered just a fraction too long to be accidental, just brief enough to seem coincidental. She watched his pupils dilate slightly at the contact, noted the momentary hitch in his breathing pattern. She spoke softly as they moved to the seating area, her voice a melodic counterpoint to the subtle background music she had selected, jazz, instrumental, sensual without being obvious. She laughed where appropriate, the sound musical and controlled, never too loud or eager. She touched his arm just enough, fingertips grazing his sleeve when emphasizing a point, palm briefly resting on his forearm when sharing a seemingly confidential observation. Each gesture was calibrated, measured, executed with precision, yet flowing with such natural grace that they appeared spontaneous, genuine, the actions of a woman genuinely enjoying male company rather than a highly trained operative implementing a seduction protocol. She could feel it already, the way his focus was narrowing, his world contracting to the space between them. The way his eyes flicked to her legs when she crossed them, to her lips when she sipped her drink, to the curve of her chest when she leaned forward slightly to set her glass down. His pupils were dilated now, his breathing pattern altered, his posture shifting to face her more directly, all unconscious biological responses to attraction, to desire, to the primitive certainty that opportunity awaited. She sat beside him on the velvet couch, one leg crossed over the other, her thigh brushing his with apparent casualness. The contact generated an immediate response, a slight tensing of his muscles, a barely perceptible intake of breath. His cologne was stronger now, mingling with the natural scent of male arousal that her heightened senses could detect beneath the expensive fragrance. Her smile deepened, taking on that particular quality that suggested shared secrets, private understanding. "Now, about those specialty items you mentioned in your message," she began, creating the conversational bridge that would lead them from social pleasantries to the business pretext, and eventually to the intelligence she needed to extract. This is where the work begins. The real dance, the intricate exchange of information, suggestion, and desire that would lead him to reveal what he knew without ever realizing he was being played. The careful balance of attraction and business, of personal interest and professional distance, of promise and deferral. But somewhere beneath the act, beneath the mission clock ticking in her mind, there was a thrill, unexpected, undeniable, and not entirely professional. A flutter of anticipation that wasn't just about mission success, but about the journey itself. The way his eyes darkened when she leaned closer. The heat radiating from where their bodies touched. The subtle dance of power as she led him precisely where she wanted him to go while allowing him to believe he was the one in control. A flicker of anticipation. Not just for the intel she would extract through this carefully orchestrated performance. Not just for the mission milestone that would bring her one step closer to the antidote, to completing her assignment, to fulfilling her purpose. But for what came next. For the progression of touch, of proximity, of intimacy that the mission parameters might demand. For the inevitable escalation from suggestion to action, from possibility to reality. For the way her body would respond. Her transformed body, with its heightened sensitivity, its complex patterns of pleasure, its capacity for sensation that still surprised and occasionally overwhelmed her. The warmth already building low in her abdomen, the subtle tingling along her skin where it had contacted his, the growing awareness of every nerve ending poised for stimulation. Because what had once been duty, mimicry, performance, now felt dangerously close to pleasure. A pleasure her male self had never experienced, never imagined, never had the capacity to comprehend. A pleasure that blurred the lines between mission and desire, between professional obligation and personal satisfaction. "You know," Lemur said, his voice dropping lower as he shifted slightly closer, "I don't usually mix business with pleasure. But I'm willing to make an exception for you, Ms. Briar." "How fortunate for us both," she replied, allowing her hand to rest briefly on his knee, the touch seemingly innocent yet charged with unmistakable intent. "I've always found that the right partnership can be mutually beneficial in unexpected ways." And tonight, she told herself as she leaned in just a little closer, allowing him a better view of her décolletage while maintaining eye contact that suggested both invitation and challenge. There's no reason I can't enjoy the game. No reason she couldn't take satisfaction in the perfect execution of her role, in the masterful manipulation of desire and information, in the sensations that her transformed body offered as part of the experience. No reason to deny the unexpected benefits of her new form, the capacity for pleasure that came with it, the power it gave her, the doors it opened. No one gets hurt. Not her assets, not her agency, not her mission, not the elaborate cover identity she now inhabited completely. Not even her conscience, because this was all in service to a greater goal, a necessary step toward finding the antidote, toward preventing thousands of deaths, toward ultimately restoring the real Yor if possible. Except the target. Anton Lemur, who believed he was seducing a potential business partner, who had no idea he was being played by one of Wise's most effective operatives, now wrapped in a package designed specifically to exploit his particular weaknesses. Lemur, whose secrets would be extracted along with his dignity, whose trust would be violated as thoroughly as his security protocols, whose downfall began the moment she opened the door in that dress. "Another drink," she offered, already reaching for his glass, her fingers brushing his deliberately as she took it. "Please," he replied, his eyes now openly admiring the view as she stood. "And perhaps after we could discuss those specialized items, in more detail. I have some very exclusive merchandise that I think would be perfect for a discerning client like yourself. I can't wait to see what you have to offer, she replied, the double entendre hanging in the air between them as she walked to the sidebar, feeling his eyes tracking every movement, every sway of her hips, every deliberate gesture designed to keep him entranced and unguarded. The game was fully in play now. The intel extraction had begun, and somewhere beneath the careful performance, the precise implementation of her training, Yor felt something unexpected: enjoyment. Not just satisfaction at a mission well executed, but genuine pleasure in the process itself. Perhaps becoming Yor had changed more than just her body after all. Chapter 20: The Art of Becoming. The morning sun filtered through the tinted windows of the car as Yor sat in the back seat, legs crossed at the ankle in that particular way she had mastered: elegant, composed, deliberately feminine. The black silk of her dress whispered against her skin with each subtle movement, a constant reminder of the body she now inhabited. Oversized sunglasses hid the subtle weariness in her eyes and the small, satisfied smile that played at the corners of her lips. The city passed by outside, early commuters hurrying to offices, delivery trucks double-parked on narrow streets, cafes setting out tables for the morning rush. Ordinary life continuing while she carried secrets that could reshape international security, all obtained between sheets in a luxury hotel suite. "Quite the sunrise this morning," remarked the driver, a nondescript man in his 40s who she knew was actually Wise Security, assigned to monitor her return. "Beautiful colors." "Indeed," she replied, her voice carrying that particular huskiness that came after a night of using it in ways that had nothing to do with conversation. Pink and gold, nature showing off. She was on her way home. The mission was over. And it had been a resounding success. Anton Lemur had spoken more than he realized. Between sips of wine and stolen kisses, between whispered compliments and breathless gasps, he had let slip shipment routes, code words, drop points. Information that had eluded conventional intelligence, gathering for months, had tumbled forth during moments of vulnerability, when his guard was down and his focus narrowed to the woman in his arms. "You're incredibly well-connected for someone so new to this market," he had murmured against her neck as his fingers traced patterns along her spine. "Almost as if you've been waiting in the shadows, watching." "I prefer to think of it as strategic patience," she had replied, arching slightly into his touch, creating just enough space for him to continue. "The right moment, the right partner, the right position. All of it. Every name, every location, every detail she had been sent to extract. He'd never even noticed. Because he'd been too consumed by her. "Yor Forger. The perfect distraction." "You have that look," the driver commented, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. "What look is that?" she asked, one perfectly shaped eyebrow arching above her sunglasses. "The mission-accomplished look, subtle but unmistakable." He smiled slightly, professionally approving rather than personally invested. "Handler Wexler will be pleased." "I should hope so," she replied, adjusting her position slightly. Her body felt different this morning, pleasantly sore in places, hypersensitive in others, marked by the night's activities in ways both visible and not. It was thorough work. She had recorded enough intel to keep the agency busy for weeks. The miniature recording device disguised as an earring had captured every relevant conversation, every slip of the tongue, every unguarded comment made in moments when Lemur believed himself to be sharing pillow talk rather than state secrets. The transfer would happen tonight, data extracted, analyzed, disseminated to field teams already positioned to act. The rest of the team would intercept shipments, infiltrate networks, dismantle operations that had been running untouched for years. The mission was technically complete. But that wasn't what lingered in her mind. What lingered was the night. The way his hands had moved over her skin, rough in places, surprisingly gentle in others. The heat of contact, the pressure of fingertips tracing paths of sensation across territories still new to her. The way her body had responded not as a weapon, not as a tactic, but as a living, breathing woman. The cascade of pleasure that had surprised her with its intensity, its complexity, its insistence. The way sensation had built upon sensation, creating layers of experience that her male form had never been capable of processing. "You're trembling," he had whispered at one point, misinterpreting her response as nervousness rather than the overwhelming sensory input it actually was. "Good trembling," she had assured him, voice husky with genuine desire. "Don't stop." She had enjoyed it. Every second. The realization still surprised her, though perhaps it shouldn't have. The scientists had been thorough in their work, rebuilding her body to function completely as female, with all the nervous system connections, hormonal balances, and physiological responses that entailed. Her body responded as yours would because, in every measurable way, it was yours. The teasing, the build-up, the moment when desire tipped over into something raw and uncontrollable. She remembered the sounds she made, soft gasps evolving into more urgent vocalizations as pleasure mounted. The way her body had arched, welcomed, craved. The hunger that had surprised her with its intensity, its insistence, its demand for satisfaction. It hadn't been about pretending. It hadn't even been about control. It had been about feeling. And it felt good. "Another 20 minutes to your residence, Ms. Forger," the driver informed her, turning onto a wider boulevard that would take them toward the residential district. "Unless you'd prefer to stop somewhere first." "No, straight home," she replied, glancing at her watch, a delicate silver timepiece that had been part of Yore's personal effects. "Anya will be back from school soon. I should be there." Loid had never experienced anything like that, not even close. Sexual pleasure as a male had been straightforward, direct, predictable in its progression and resolution. Pleasant, certainly, but nothing like the complex symphony her transformed body had introduced her to. There had been intimacy, sure. Strategic relationships maintained as part of various covers. A few genuine connections made and broken as missions demanded, but nothing like this. Nothing that engaged her entire being, mind, body, senses, in a coordinated pursuit of pleasure that was as much about the journey as the destination. "You remind me of a Renaissance painting," Anton had murmured at one point, propped on an elbow as he gazed down at her. All those curves, that impossible waist, that perfect skin, like something created rather than born. The irony had almost made her laugh. "Flatterer," she had replied instead, trailing fingertips along his jaw, "though I do appreciate fine art, especially when it's hands-on." Nothing that made her feel lit from within. Nothing that made her want more. The car turned onto a quieter street, nearing home. The residential district was calmer at this hour, children at school, adults at work, the sidewalks relatively empty except for the occasional dog walker or delivery person. Yor straightened her posture slightly, lips parted as the breeze from the cracked window played with her hair. The sensation was pleasant, cool air against warm skin, the subtle scent of early summer carried on the wind. Her body felt more alive somehow, more attuned to the world around it, more responsive to even minor stimuli. "Almost there," the driver announced, slowing as they approached the familiar apartment building. "Will you need assistance with anything?" "No, thank you," she replied, gathering her small clutch purse where the recording device would be safely stashed until tonight's transfer. "I travel light these days." Yes, she was completing her mission. Yes, she was still in control. But now, she understood something the real Yor had known all along. You can use your body as a tool and still love the way it feels. You can serve the mission and take pleasure from the path it leads you down. "Last night," Anton had whispered as dawn approached, his fingers tracing lazy patterns across her bare stomach, "was that just business for you?" She had turned to face him, allowing genuine satisfaction to show in her eyes. "Does it feel like just business?" she had countered, pressing her body against his in a way that left no doubt about her physical response, at least. "No," he had admitted, pulling her closer. "It feels like something considerably more recreational." "Then perhaps," she had suggested, lips brushing his ear, "we should stop analyzing and simply enjoy what remains of the night." She wasn't just pretending anymore. She was becoming. And if the journey brought her a little indulgence along the way, so be it. The car rolled to a stop in front of the apartment building, the engine purring softly before falling silent. The driver exited first, circling around to open her door with practiced efficiency. She stepped out slowly, smoothing the hem of her sleek black dress with a gesture that drew the eye to the length of her legs, the subtle curve of her hip. The movement was automatic now, not calculated or performed, but simply the way her body navigated the world. The scent of Anton's cologne still lingered faintly on her skin, mingled with the more intimate sense of the night's activities, a subtle olfactory reminder of boundaries crossed and pleasures taken. "Ms. Forger," the driver nodded politely, his eyes professionally averted from the subtle marks visible on her collarbone just above the neckline of her dress. "Data transfer is scheduled for 2100 hours. An agent will contact you." "Understood," she replied, slipping her key from her purse. "And thank you for the ride." She would shower. Become mama again. The transition from seductress to mother would take more than just different clothes. It would require a complete shift in demeanor, in body language, in the subtle signals she projected to the world. But she had mastered these transitions, had learned to move fluidly between the different aspects of Yore's complex identity. "Something pleasant about your meeting, Ms. Forger?" the building's doorman asked as she passed, noting her expression. "Just a successful business arrangement," she replied with a smile that suggested volumes while revealing nothing. Everything fell exactly into place. But for now, she let herself enjoy one last memory of the night as she walked through the lobby toward the elevators, her heels clicking rhythmically against the polished marble floor. The way he had moaned her name, Yor, a name that had once belonged to someone else but now felt undeniably hers, claimed through pleasure and performance alike. The way she had whispered his, calculated and controlled even in moments of apparent abandon, never forgetting the mission even as her body surrendered to sensation. The way it had felt like something more than just espionage. More than just the mission. It had felt like freedom. Freedom to experience, to feel, to take pleasure in a body that responded with startling sensitivity to every touch, every whisper, every intimate contact. Freedom to discover capabilities and sensations that had been theoretically explained, but could only truly be understood through experience. "Home at last," she murmured to herself as the elevator doors closed, sealing her in momentary privacy. She removed her sunglasses, examining her reflection in the mirrored wall, lips slightly swollen, a faint mark visible at the juncture of neck and shoulder, eyes holding a satisfied gleam that owed nothing to professional accomplishment and everything to physical pleasure. Soon she would step back into the role of Yor Forger, mother and homemaker. Soon the night would fade into memory, filed away alongside other missions completed, other identities inhabited. But for this brief moment between roles, between responsibilities, she allowed herself to simply be a woman satisfied, a mission accomplished, a transformation completed in ways that went beyond the physical. The elevator chimed softly, announcing her arrival home. Time to become mama again. But the woman who stepped off the elevator carried within her something new, not just intelligence gathered or mission parameters met, but experience gained, pleasure discovered, freedom tasted. And that, perhaps, was the most unexpected development of all.